Let's turn to politics for a quick second here before I get into P. Diddy. I'll get into that in a second. But I want to do this politics thing right here because Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic presidential nominee, has begun a media blitz with just 4 weeks to go before the election. Harris and our running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, are set to appear in a handful of interviews with traditional and new media figures this month. The two sat down with 60 Minutes for a pair of interviews that will air this week. Harris is also scheduled to sit down with The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, The Howard Stern Show, and The View. The media blitz from Harris and Walz comes after weeks of criticism from Republicans who've accused the pair of avoiding taking questions from the media. I can't be happier. Personally speaking, I would like to see them both go into enemy territory because in my opinion, it's real easy to go and sit down with people who are clearly in opposition of the other candidate. So when you are neutral or you are somebody that is the opposite or an adversarial person for the competition, in favor of the competition, I don't have a problem with that. Because to me, that's where real questions get asked. And nobody can accuse something of being softball. Not saying they're all softball questions, but people can make those accusations, and that's not healthy for a cynical society that's looking for an excuse to point the finger at you, that you ain't stepping up, that you ain't embracing competition, that you're not accepting it, you're not doing those things. I don't like that. I don't like that. Now, I'm going to sit up there and tell you right now, I've made it a point to highlight the fact that I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. But I don't sit up there and say to you, I'm not going to vote for Trump because of politics, because I believe the world is cyclical. Sometimes you need different things. Sometimes you need different policies compared to what you may need at other times. And the prism of history usually tells us who's more effective as a commander-in-chief than somebody else. But when I think about Trump, I think about the fact that the presidency is supposed to be about statesmanship. It's supposed to be about galvanizing Americans and bringing us all together for a common cause and making sure we understand that you don't just say America first. We epitomize America first because we take care of one another. And when I see any politician only doing that for their constituency, their supporters, and saying the hell with everybody else, I get very, very concerned. Now, in the case of Kamala Harris, to be fair, what am I saying about her? You got to go out there and do those interviews. Biden wasn't doing interviews. There was no primary. After there was no primary and he shows up June 27th and wet the bed during the debate against Donald Trump, which ultimately facilitated him stepping out of the race and propelling you to being the Democratic nominee for the presidency of the United States. You didn't have to go through a primary either. And the last time we saw you in a primary, you couldn't even make it to Iowa. So again, can you stand the heat? I believe Kamala Harris can. I just want to see her show the world she can. Now, she did it in the debate. I don't care what anybody said. She smoked Trump during that debate. He babbled on where they're eating pets, they're eating dogs, they're eating cats. Remember that? And he looked ultimately silly. And Kamala Harris had a field day with them. But then J.D. Vance showed up in the vice presidential debate against Tim Walz, and everybody wants to say he was lying about this, he was lying about that, or Tim Walz seemed nervous. Here's the reality. Tim Walz's job was to make J.D. Vance look as radical as he had appeared to be in the past, on top of the fact that you had to make him look like not so much of a nice guy. And you didn't do that. As a result, that's why this media blitz is necessary. And you're Kamala Harris, you got to show up and you got to answer questions. Whether or not you flip-flop, what are your positions? Why are those positions such as they are, et cetera, et cetera? What about the economy? What about inflation? How are you going to sit up there and tell us that people making under $400,000 ain't going to get taxed extra? But you got trillions of dollars in debt. Why are we going to pay it back? These are questions that deserve to be asked and deserve an answer. A truthful answer that allows us to say we agree or we disagree. Now, I know that's saying, hey, what about him? Because he never tells the truth, as in Donald Trump. That may be the case. But you have people on the right who have said, hey, he has a record because he's already sat in that seat. And we have 4 years of him governing. The world was divisive. He didn't make it any better. It seemed to be chaos. All of those things are true, but in the end, they were able to point to an economy that existed before COVID came along and say, he did all right. So which side are you taking? We don't know. You know how we find out? Through interviews. Interviews that are conducted by folks who are very objective and neutral and piercing and probing in their deliveries, in their presentations, to make sure they send a message that this ain't about whether I like you or not. This is about how much the American people should like you or not. You see who Trump has talked to. You see who Kamala Harris is planning on talking to, if she hasn't already. At some point in time, a neutral party who doesn't give a shit about either side is what we're after when it comes to asking these questions. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.